Hi everyone, I'm Justin with Redwood Adventures. It's the end of March 2020 if y'all know what that means. I know a lot of us are stuck inside right now and don't have the ability to get out into nature. I wanted to share with you what we love here, the ancient Sequoia sempervirens of Redwood National Park. This time of the year, we're usually super busy, running private tours 7 days a week, sharing with our guests the joys and glorious wonders of this forest. Right now, though, things are a bit different in the world, so we're trying some different routes to help bring your hearts here into the forest. Before I go any further, I want you to know that we are being very careful with all of the guidelines. This is my home. I have not done any traveling to get to this place. I am not using any off-limits areas, and I'm being very careful to maintain awareness about the other humans that might be here in the forest. I can confidently tell you, with the parking lots being shut down and my awareness of these roads, I am quite the only person in the forest today, which is very spectacular. Anyways, let's get on. I'll try to share with you just a little bit of what we help folks understand on our guided tours. Into the forest we go. So right off the bat, you'll see these beautiful trunks fusing together and growing out of each other. Now, most other trees on Earth, they like to grow from seed and grow as a straight single trunk. Coast redwood, or Sequoia sempervirens, usually does not sprout from seed. It's not impossible, it's just not very common. Typically, these trees sprout out of themselves and out of their own root systems. Isn't that interesting? So you'll see this clump here, although it has multiple trunks, if we tested the DNA, this is all one organism. More so than that, the roots of these trees, they go so far around, potentially as far around themselves as they grow tall. And we're talking the tallest trees on Earth. 380 feet tall is the Hyperion today. Anyways, you see that clump there. Her roots going under the trail. There's a very extremely high chance these trunks are genetically connected to this trunk and could be considered the same organism. Just pause for a minute here. The beautiful rain dropping on our sword ferns. Where I am here, we like to consider the crown jewel of what remains of the old growth redwoods. Unfortunately, due to our lack of understanding of the significance of this place, we have lost about 97% of the old growth forest, making this a very magical place to come experience. Rain is an important factor in the happiness and health of these trees. We're approaching a monstrous titan redwood here. You'll be able to see a bit of what I mean. The range of the Redwood Forest does indeed go all the way down south, past Santa Cruz. But, not sure if you can tell just how monstrous this tree is. There's a big old park bench for a bit of perspective. Not all parts of the Redwood Range are they extremely happy and thriving in the ecosystem that they dream about. This, where I am today, these flat, protected plains, covered in moisture, covered in good soil, these alluvial plains, a scientist might say, provide the best habitat remaining on Earth for these ancient trees, growing to monstrous sizes when they get all that they want. Now, we often say redwoods are the tallest trees on Earth. And you betcha, scientifically they are indeed the tallest living organisms on Earth. But it's much more than that. The height of these trees is one of the things that we can prove 100% factually, right? You can measure it. This tree is this tall. The other parts of the story, how old, how big, they get a bit confusing the way that we understand plants and trees specifically, making it a bit hard to describe the glory, to a researcher often, of how special these trees are. I'm gonna walk up to this tree now for a moment, just so you can get a bit of scale for how huge this trunk is. An umbrella. Giant trees. I'm speaking of the giant trees and trying to show you some of the structures this massive sequoia has made up in her canopy. Because what's very glorious about this forest that often surprises folks, as we walk past this fallen log, we call this a nursery log, you can see the garden growing on top of it. Let's take a look at that closely for a second. You can tell there's a bit of soil on top of the log, years and years of leaves falling, then ferns propagating, creates a nice little soil mat for the huckleberries and the larger species to begin to propagate. Now imagine, whoa, hundreds of feet off the ground, up in those canopy pockets of the tree, the same thing happening. Now, we did not really understand that there were these gardens upon gardens upon gardens hanging up in the canopy of the redwoods until recent years, believe it or not. I think that is absolutely startling. Anywho, all of those layers up in the trees help make this some of the densest and most beautiful forest on Earth, facilitating layers of ecosystems. We like to think of this similar to the great ocean of the world. All the fish, they don't just float up on the top, huh? Neither do they just sink all down to the bottom. Our redwood forest, just like the world's ocean, has all these different layers of ecosystems. Now, the sound of the rain today is beautiful. See some pretty little mushrooms down here. I'm realizing a question that our guests often ask on our tours. It's very quiet in here, they might say. Where are all the songbirds? Many times of the year, it is just silent in here. There's a beautiful bird called the varied thrush. It looks similar to the American robin. We like to call them the train whistle bird. When they're coming together to partner up and mate, the calls just make this screech through the forest. It sounds reminiscent of somebody that needs to get their brakes replaced, some squeaky brakes. Ha 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 ha. Looking over yonder, I realize another common question. Folks are often scratching their heads. What is all that black stuff all over the trees? I think they know already, but there's just so much of it, and it's so different than most other forests on Earth, they don't want to believe it. Sequoia sempervirens, everlasting, immortal. So over yonder you can see the original trunk of that tree potentially was struck by lightning or just many wildfires coming through the forest. Over the years ended up burning away the entire original trunk. A bit of foliage up there, so it's hard to tell. I'll continue walking around her. But what you can see very obviously, growing on the outer part, is although it was attacked by fire after fire, lost almost its entire body, it still stands physically, and it resprouted itself out of itself and continues to thrive and grow here in the forest. I don't know about you, but could there be a better role model for resilience? Sometimes with the massive trees, it's hard to look at them and really tell that they're growing out of each other and their own roots, reiterating, you might say, cloning, you might say. Sometimes I like to think of it as a photocopy. Anywho, you can see, I'm not sure if you can tell, I can tell here on the ground. By the way, one of the great things about joining a